Hello everyone, welcome back again to episode 11, and continuing from where we left off last time. As I was saying, yeah, Henry Sr. has the ability to pass through the stones. If you didn't watch the last episode, then you probably have no idea what's going on right now, what we're talking about, but once upon a time, Outlander, stone circles. Henry Sr. has the ability to pass through the stones. He passed it down to Regina, and she passed it down to her children, my OCs. But Henry never told Regina about it because he didn't want Cora to find out about it, because it was his secret, his bit of magic that he could have and use against her if he had to at some point. So when the children were born, when Donald and Douglas were born, Leopold is their father, and I subscribe to the idea that Leopold was abusive towards Regina. And so Henry knew that they wouldn't have a very good life in the castle with Leopold as their father. He knew that Regina likely wouldn't have any say in their upbringing. And that Leopold would likely raise them in his image, and he didn't want that. So he took them the night after they were born and sent them through the stones, and quite possibly against his better judgment told Regina that they had died. Because, like, newborn twins in, like, medieval enchanted forest and all that. But, so he sent them through the stones to protect them from Leopold. They ended up in Scotland at the Outlander Stone Circle Craignadoon, which I don't believe is actually a real location, there are stone circles, like, that's an actual bit of folklore, that's an actual thing, but, like, obviously you can't, they're not time portals, but, but he sent them through, and that's where they ended up, and that's where they were raised. And then several years, 8 or 9 years later, Rosie was born shortly before Leopold's death. And Leopold didn't want another daughter. He thought another daughter would overshadow Snow. That Regina would obviously care for her own daughter more than she would care for Snow. And he didn't want that, so he was actually going to just, like, outright kill her. Kill Rosie, that is. And so Leopold, or so Henry, persuaded him to give him Rosie, and so, like, he told Leopold, I can send her away to another land, you'll never have to see her or worry about her again. It'll be like she's dead to you. So Leopold agrees, gives him Rosie, and he sends Rosie through the same stone circle. She ends up in Scotland as well. She and the boys are reunited in foster care, and it goes on from there. What were we even... so, like... I don't even remember what the point of that ramble was. Yeah. That was my little meshing Outlander with that bit of folklore there. I think it would really work well because, like, in Scottish folklore, and they touch on this in Outlander, the stone circles, the fairy hills, are said to be portals to fairyland, essentially. So, like, I kind of want to mesh that together and, like, kind of have the enchanted forest from Once Upon a Time, taking fall damage here, and have that's fairyland. That's the fairyland from Scottish folklore, the other world. And maybe the characters there are like low-key fae, sort of. But because Donald and Douglas, I upped the brightness on this video, I think, so the torches are very bright. They're kind of, Donald, Douglas, and Rosie were kind of branded changelings because they were found at the stone circles as babies, and, like, that's a thing. Not in modern day Scotland, obviously, but, like, in, like, Outlander, like, it was a thing back in the day, where if somebody's baby was, like, sickly and failing to thrive, they would assume that it was a changeling and, like, leave it on a fairy hill in hopes that the fae would return their own child to them, which of course would never actually happen because the fae don't actually exist, presumably. So, like, Donald, Douglas, and Rosie are kind of, like, kind of assumed to be fae. They were taken as fae. Or no, they're changelings. They're kind of, like, assumed to be changelings. Because of the whole stone circle thing. And no one ever figured out, like, where they came from. They just appeared on the fairy hill, so, like, they were like, I guess they're changelings then. Maybe the fae do exist. So naturally, Donald and Douglas have some following. Actually, let's bring another fandom into it because I used to do a crossover with the Worst Witch. So let's bringing that into it. I follow the Worst Witch lore that magic is passed down from mother to daughter and father to son. That is according to the remake of Worst Witch, actually, not the original. But anyway, that means that Cora would have passed down her magic to Regina, which he did, and then Regina would pass down her magic to any biological daughters, my OCs, Rosie and the two half-sisters, Eva and Leia, so they're all witches. They all have magic, but Donald and Douglas don't. But Donald and Douglas, I don't even remember where I got this idea from, but, like, somewhere along the line, I think I took it out of maybe some other fic I read, or something, but that the Mills line is cursed, so they can only ever bear female heirs. They can never bear a male heir. So and the only reason why Donald and Douglas are male is because Regina's magic tapped in when she was pregnant with them, because she knew that it was obviously before she started practicing magic, or, like, when she was first beginning to. She knew that Leopold wanted a son she was afraid of what Leopold might do to a daughter. So her magic kind of like, of its own accord, tapped in and altered the pregnancy to turn the already established female fetuses male, essentially. So Donald and Douglas are actually intersex or hermaphrodites. That's never actually mentioned yet, anyway. I don't know if it'll ever be mentioned, but that's just a bit of lore there. So because of that, Donald and Douglas actually have like a tiny bit of their own magic. They don't have enough to actually be able to wield it, but they have they're kind of a little otherworldly. They have enough that it makes them a little otherworldly, a little they kind of like have this ability to hold their breaths underwater for a really long time and to withstand cold water. They can swim in the sea. Haven't actually brought that in yet, but it's a thing. And that's actually their magic tapping in, and yeah. Anything else? I think I've run out of things to say now. Oh, jeez. I don't know if it was very rambly. I don't know if it really made sense. To do a true Outlander Once Upon a Time crossover, what if Claire, because like everybody in the 18th century kind of like assumes she's, or like they kind of like toy with the idea that she's fae because of her ability to travel through the stones. And so what if she was actually born in like from the Enchanted Forest, and the Enchanted Forest is our fae world? That could work. That could work. I really like these glowvine things. Although it doesn't seem like you can actually collect them. I tried this shield at one point and not, Or like, what if maybe Henry Sr. is fae or part fae, and that's where he gets the ability from? Which would technically make Regina and Regina's children also part fae. I keep saying Regina's children. Canonically, if you don't know anything about the show, canonically Regina doesn't have any biological children. She just has her one adoptive kid. But like I gave her like 5 biological children from 2 different fathers, so which is excessive, I know. It's excessive. I actually got a comment at one point saying how excessive it was, and I'm like, yeah, you know, I almost wrote Rosie out at one point, like way back when I first conceived the idea of Rosie and Donald and Douglas. Just because, like, I thought, like, okay, like, 5 is a lot, but, like, I ended up keeping her because I really like the idea of Donald and Douglas having a baby sister that they adore. Because even they are technically older than them. But because of the stones, they're not. They were born before them, but Eva and Leia are Daniel's daughters, the stable boy who Cora killed because Cora's a bitch. But yeah, they were born before Donald and Douglas, but because of the stones and traveling through the stones, Donald and Douglas end up older than them. It's a thing. Because I liked the idea. Mostly because I liked the idea of Donald and Douglas taking care of their little sisters and their mistreated sisters, and just like Donald and Douglas are very sweet characters. Like, they're very sweet characters, and they adore their sisters, and yeah, and I adored the idea of them having little sisters that they look after, so. And it's very, like, on their... It worked out well because the legal age in Scotland, is 16, so, like, Donald and Douglas left the foster system and were out on their own, and they actually ended up taking in their sisters. They were 16, so they took in their sisters at 16, and essentially worked themselves to the bone providing for them, and they were poor as church mice living on their fishing boat. But Donald and Douglas are like that. They will dedicate themselves. They are dedicated and adorable, and you can't not like them. Also slightly, and I low-key blame Oron and the Hitachian twins for this. There's like some low-key twin sus there. Because why not? I decided it was a good idea because, you know what? It works. There's some trauma there, and because of that trauma, they're just extra close. I know, it's weird. It's weird. But yeah, they're very attached to each other. I kind of... Eva and Leia were originally a part of my Worst Witch crossover fic, and then I carried them over. And Eva and Leia from the Worst Witch crossover were very independent, very there was a lot of trauma there, and they were extremely powerful witches. And then the video's ending, so we'll see you later, everybody.